Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. Familiar with the name. Familiar with the name.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public. And we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. It is DNC week. I kind of want like one of those let's get ready to rumble moments. We're rolling live right now on Rumble, rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Join us over there. You can join us on Locals now. You can join us at any time. If you want to support the program, go over to kyleseraphin.com. You can find the program there. So if you're struggling on whatever platform you're on, whether it be YouTube or X or whatever else, go to kyleseraphin.com and make sure you like this video wherever you see it. Join our Locals community if you guys want to get part of it. Otherwise, you can see that the chat is already rolling on Rumble. They get it done. You guys are kind of nuts this morning. Somebody continues to tell me, and yes, you know who I'm talking about, that the dildo of consequences rarely arrives lubricated. And this dildo of consequences for the city of Chicago might be quite awful. Yes, that is a pretty terrible expression, and it's probably beyond PG-13. And yet, whenever I say it to my military friends, they always get it. Anybody who's ever been in the military knows that there's a concept, the big green weenie, the big blue weenie, depending on what service you were in. And there's another one that's called Bohica, which is to say, bend over here, it comes again. It's when bad things are going to happen because of administrative reasons. And those are very familiar to those of us, law enforcement, military, even first responder types. You guys kind of know things are going to get bad. And I think Chicago is about to have a really, really rough week. We have dispatched Mark Naughton. You can follow him at Mark Naughton9. Mark Naughton9. He's going to set up his own Locals actually too. And he's going to be in Chicago, I think starting tomorrow, hopefully to catch some of the fireworks. There's a lot of folks in town for that kind of fun, and it should be very interesting. We're going to give you a little bit of a taste and a little bit of a preview and hopefully cover some other news today. I hope you guys are ready for a bunch of information because there's a bunch out there. Before we get started, let's do a little thanks to the friends over at My Patriot Supply. It's kind of important to talk about that kind of stuff, particularly when you're looking at maybe, I don't know, civil unrest happening in your city. Folks, if you come after me, you come after my family, you know I'm going to be ready. I hope you guys are ready. Hopefully you are ready in Chicago. That's why we use My Patriot Supply. Right now, you can get a deal on the 3-month Mega Food Supply. It's an emergency food kit packed with 33 varieties of filling and delicious foods. And that includes chicken-flavored rice, old-fashioned spaghetti. I guess that's a Chicago thing, isn't it? Savory broccoli cheese soup. You're also going to get the protein kit, a bonus protein kit with diced beef, flavorful chicken chunks, and 3 varieties of beans, 9 different fruits, vegetables, and snacks. All that stuff in a kit that's going to give you up to 2,500 calories per day, keep you well fed and ready for God knows what. You can also stretch a little further if you have to. It's our duty as Americans to protect our families. You never want to be in line for handouts or breadlines. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Get some food you can depend on for up to 25 years. Go to Prepare Like Kyle. That's the website, preparelikekyle.com, preparelikekyle.com to save $300 on the mega 3-month emergency food kit from My Patriot Supply. The shipping is fast. It is free. Preparelikekyle.com. Save that $300. Preparelikekyle.com. Very easy. Guys, make sure you guys prepare yourselves. Especially if you're in Chicago. You might want to hit the rush order on that one because it looks spicy. Should we get right into some stupidity? I just realized that I didn't name all my movie clips. My video clips are going to be coming at us. I hate it when I do that. Sometimes it happens. All right, let's get started with what CNN said. This was actually quite interesting to me. I do find it very interesting when they actually tell you what you should think. Democrats gather to enshrine their audacious power play. That's a little bit critical coming from our friends over at the CNN, isn't it? This is why I call them center left. Sometimes they say things that are true. And they talk about the refashioning of the race since Trump is left and that he's disoriented. I don't actually think that's that true. Democrats gather to enshrine their audacious power play. That, of course, is not the headline of the actual article. That was on the main page before they decided, like, that was a little bit too harsh to our buddies that we're always trying to prop up. So this is the actual headline. They've gathered to enshrine their stunning turn from Biden to Harris. All of this stuff, accurate. Stephen Collinson giving his analysis. And if you're seeing on the screen right now, what do you see? We're seeing a black dude wearing kind of like a beanie, and then unknown race guy wearing some kind of ceasefire Palestinian garb. Always interesting. Always interesting that that's who's in play right now. Because we're talking about a DNC where they are apparently most worried about what happened in 1968, race riots and chaos and people getting injured and all kinds of nonsense. So we'll kind of move our way towards that. But it says this week, the Democrats will enshrine one of the most audacious power plays in modern political history. Yeah, that's what we kept calling a coup. Remember how you're not allowed to call it a coup, even though it was a coup? I think that's what an audacious power play is. It's a coup. Begins with adulation for Joe Biden, who's going to be speaking tonight. He's going to be giving his sort of grateful speech as he agrees to pass the torch, but I don't think he was necessarily willing, and neither do you. The moment will be bittersweet for the 81-year-old, a.k.a. 1,081-year-old man, who, despite a productive tenure, was it though? Was it? Isn't that why they had to get him out? Because one, he was a complete disaster, and two, the economy is destroyed, and they have no chance of being able to hang their hopes on the man that did it. They're going to hang their hopes on the woman who helped him do it. Even better. Okay. Anyway, he was pressured out by the party leaders. We already know that. Ending a 50-year career due to the ravages of age. If only someone could have predicted that getting old would have consequences. If only there was some, like, sort of example in all of human history that as people age, they become less and less with it. It's almost like they've never seen human history. These are anti-humanists, the Democrat Party. We're going to talk about their free abortions and free vasectomies. If there isn't a more anti-human thing than shutting down your reproductive line, I'm not talking about people who have gone out there and said, okay, I've had the right number of people, or added the right number of people to the planet, and my family line will continue. They're offering it to anybody, young people, whatever, and they think that's a winner. I keep telling you guys that the platform for the Democrat Party has nothing to do with the Constitution. It has absolutely nothing to do with improving this country. It doesn't have to do with fixing the economy or trying to run on issues. What they want to do is abortion for all. Racism is everywhere. They're going to have to talk about these kind of things. You have to vote for Kamala because if you don't, you're a dirty racist or a misogynist or a sexist or a homophobe. I don't know what that has to do with anything, but why not? The gay flag is the actual flag of America. All this stuff is crazy. This is what they continue to do. I wrote this down months and months ago, and I have it just sitting on this pad next to me. And every time I see what it is that they decide to put out up front, like, why is it abortion? As we covered on Thursday and Friday's show, it disproportionately affects black women. That's who gets abortions in this country at an overwhelming rate when it comes to the percentages. So they're happy to continue on sort of that Margaret Sanger eugenics anti-black agenda. And I don't understand why Republicans don't just nail this down every single time. It's like, why do they tell you they love you? They just want to kill black babies. Do you guys like babies? Do you like seeing more black people? Why do you want to kill them? Because they do. We're not into that. The end. It doesn't even have to be a national issue. It's anti-human. And you're shutting down reproductive lines. And that also includes the transing the kids thing and sterilization of young children by giving them hormones. All this stuff. It's the same value agenda. And whether you call it demonic or satanic or just anti-human, they all kind of fit into that same little category, don't they? It feels like evil. And it's totally unrecognizable from a Democrat Party that you would have found in the 1990s. You couldn't have said any of this garbage in the 90s. The Clintons couldn't have gotten away with pitching this. They were in the safe, legal, and rare. And in 25 years, they've been able to go from safe, legal, and rare to why don't you get an abortion and shut down your reproductive line if you're a man at our Democratic convention in Chicago, which we're hoping doesn't turn into a riot. That's a pretty big push. That's a long ways to go. It feels pretty evil. Maybe that's why some of us have to push back on this stuff. The good news is the media got the hint. They are going to have this like handover of power, and they are going to do this kind of thing. But how about this? My buddy sent me this. He's an FBI agent, really good dude. One of our types, like a meat eater. There's this video running around on the internet right now of guys that can't curl 110 pounds. Like, I'm not a very big guy. I'm bigger than I used to be. I'm like 180 pounds and 5'8". Okay, so there you go. That's how tall I am. I was 160 pounds. I used to rep out like 125 pounds when I was younger in my 20s. And there's these young men walking up to this curl bar. It's got 110 pounds on it, on an easy curl bar, no less. And they can't lift it. So literally last night after I'm watching it, I run over and I don't know why I'm telling you this story, but it seems interesting to me. So I run into my garage and I throw 110 pounds on a straight bar, like one of the 7.5 footers, 7.25 footers. And I curled it out and I'm like, why are men not able to do this? In the meantime, my buddy who definitely can do this, he's not one of the weirdos that can't, sends me this and he says, has the CIA decided to weigh in on the election? What you're seeing right now is the New York Times, Vanity Fair, Salon, Washington Post, the AP, more New York Times as an opinion, CBS, The Guardian, and NPR all want to talk about joy. They all want to talk about the joy. Absolutely bizarre. How did they come up with the word joy, you wonder, right? Well, I have this hypothesis, and it's that they all get the same talking points. Maybe we should talk about what a hypothesis is before we get deeper into the things that are exciting about the DNC, since they're going to be coronating or enshrining this lady. Maybe we talk about hypothesis. I think the first video is a hypothesis video.
There is this wonderful word that has a great meaning, and it's called hypothesis. Which means that you have an idea, and then it is well accepted, it will be tested, and then you will learn whether it was correct or not, but there will be no pride associated with the hypothesis, because after all, it was a hypothesis.
Right.
And then you will reconvene, and then create a new hypothesis.
Right.
What? There's this wonderful word, and it's called hypothesis. All right, so my hypothesis is that they're going to trot out a new line. It's not just joy, because that's what's on the Democrat side. In fact, it should be listed here on the 5 things to watch for at the Democratic National Convention. It should be looking for joy. What you're going to see also is a line of attack called exhaustion. It's this word. It's called exhaustion. And they're going to talk about how Donald Trump, not Donald Trump himself, because Donald Trump is basically like the Energizer Bunny. For as old as he is and as crazy as his schedule is, and it's nuts, he does make mistakes, no doubt. He said that the Presidential Medal of Freedom is a better medal to get than the Medal of Honor. Unnecessary misstep. I'm not going to belabor the point. Don't worry about this. It's stupid, but just like, come on, like stay on message. But they're going to talk about exhaustion, that there's a fatigue that exists for his supporters and the people on the left. They're just fatigued of Donald Trump. And so we just need someone who's not going to make us so tired. There's this word called exhaustion. I've got some examples of that coming from Morning Joe. And when Morning Joe Scarborough, goes out and pushes it, then I think that you can hear it. Here are the things that ABC thinks you need to watch for the Democratic National Convention, the DNC. It's going to be a political gathering, they state, and they want to know, it'll be a party, but for how much longer? In other words, is the Democrat Party going to lose that honeymoon status? Are people who are euphoric that the human Roomba of Joe Biden can no longer, run the party, that they're going to kick him to the side and they're going to make him give a speech, and they kind of like have him, up against the wall. Now we got Kamala, so there's a sheer joy. Again, here's that word. Hold on, there it is. Boop, there's the joy, right? Everywhere. There's a sheer joy that you see in Democrats these days. It's just incredible. I mean, it's really remarkable the way that she and the campaign and now Tim Walz have been able to capitalize on the frustration and the sense of dread of a possible Donald Trump, J.D. Vance administration. That's that exhaustion. People are coming out of the woodwork to volunteer. It's demonstrable, says Doug Jones. He's a former Democrat, Alabama. He was in the Senate. Okay. So we're going to see a party, but will it last? And there's a lot of joy. It's a month-long honeymoon. It's basically a month-long fake, right? So you got that going on. Then they say their message is going to be freedom. And freedom is the message that they're going to use this campaign song from Beyonce, who's totally on board. And she's always had messages of black empowerment and sisterhood and womanhood and all this kind of stuff. So more freedom, less of a threat to democracy. That's all really weird stuff. It really is weird. The word that they used to go after J.D. Vance is actually appropriate because it's truly weird. But we're going to do freedom. That's the thing. The Democrats actually believe in freedom. They don't believe in freedom for children who are in the womb. They don't believe in freedom for you to engage in civil liberties, like, I don't know, talk on social media. They want to censor you and hate speech. They don't believe in your freedom to own a firearm. They don't really believe in freedom at all. They just kind of turn these words on their heads and make them sound kind of like joy. There's nothing faker than the fake laugh of Kamala Harris. There's nothing joyful about it. It's actually pretty gross. They also say we should look for Biden to have a hero's welcome. I'm just going through the 5 points here that ABC thinks are important. And then the really interesting thing, how are they going to handle the conflict in Gaza? You know, the one that kicked off on October 7th because Joe Biden is really weak and he doesn't inspire fear and he doesn't sort of have the same sort of standing on the international stage. He's unable to keep the Russians in check, the Palestinian group in check. They can't go in there and bully their way in. We're talking about that in contrast, right? Because campaigns are about contrast. One person did one thing. We now have the contrast of the Harris-Biden. There's potential world wars breaking out. You got Iran rattling the saber. You got the Gazans, whatever the hell they want to call themselves, out there running around and now crying about getting bombed and killed and so on. And then you've got Russia overstepping its bounds. China just kind of eyeing Taiwan. And then the contrast was like a movement towards world peace. Oh, yeah, don't forget the Taliban running around with all of our military equipment. So that's the contrast. How are they going to handle the war in Gaza? Not so much because the people that are inside the arenas are going to care about Gaza nearly as much, although some of them probably do. It's the people that are outside that are marching that are furious and they're ready to do the violence. They're the ones that screaming the free, free Palestine over and over and over again. So that's going to be interesting. And then the last thing they told us to watch for, and this is actually fairly interesting, who's going to be the keynote speaker? It hasn't been announced yet. The former keynote speakers in 2004 were Barack Obama, who went on to take the presidential nomination in 2008. They've had Julian Castro, who's the mayor of San Antonio, and they've had Elizabeth Warren, and those people both suck, so that's not great. And they don't know who it's going to be this time. Who could it be? So that's really exciting. That's what we're looking forward to here, I guess. What I'm looking forward to looks something like this. Boop. That the DNC will be the opposite of 1968 because they learned lessons the hard way. MSNBC says 1968 was one of the worst years in American history. They just make that up. Like, I don't know. Like, why? Because they think so. Because it made the DNC look really bad. Because there was like this history of race riots and there was trauma all over. We were in the middle of Vietnam. Death to soldiers, death to leaders, death of dreams. A year of death, 1968. Certainly Lawrence O'Donnell, who runs The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell on MSNBC. Definitely not a hyperbolic speaker. It was the deadliest year in the Vietnam War. A lot of families lost soldiers. Almost 17,000 were killed. He talks about his own personal history with experiencing some of that. That all sounds tough. Is it MLK was shot? Yep. Assassinated in April 1968 as well. And then you had this chaos in Chicago. So they're going to try to avoid that. And they're going to do it by stacking loads and loads and loads of cops in the middle of the street. And so they have to have this difficult balance. You know, the freedom they just talked about to express yourself, which you do have a right to do in this country. You can march and have stupid chants. I've been listening to it over and over again. It's the free, free Palestine. When are they getting anywhere with that? Is there more freedom in Palestine? Because that seems to be the theme that they want to go with. The freedom theme, the Beyonce theme. Is there freedom? Do they have a right to freedom there? Do they really? Are they kind of like a territory that just like struck out and snuck over the border and did some pretty heinous things to people that were not looking for any trouble? They were at like music festivals and stuff and just living their lives. Anyway, that's what they're going to try to avoid. And they hope that because they learned their lessons, do we really see Americans learning lessons from 1968 and projecting that forward? I just saw you guys in the chat talking about the stacks of bricks that were being left, the pallets of bricks. Oh, you remember those pallets of bricks that we saw in 2020 that were just popping up? major cities and places that didn't. I've actually seen them. I actually saw them in Washington, D.C. in 2020 in the summer. Yeah. There was some reason someone had stacked like maybe a couple dozen bricks on the side right outside of the White House. And then we're out there standing a line trying to give the Secret Service a break so they can throw up the anti-scale fencing. And then these, do-gooder types, these crunchy ladies, leftists, were coming up and covering the bricks with like bags of granola bars and snacks. And we were picking them up and throwing the snacks in the trash because, one, you can't leave them on the street. And like, what are you doing? And they were like, we're leaving them for the protesters. And I'm like, that's cool. We're throwing them in the trash can because you can't just leave them. And also, what are all these loose bricks doing? If you guys have ever been around a big city in the Northeast, there's not like a lot of stacks of loose bricks, but there were, and there are. So we'll see. Maybe Mark Naughton is going to be there to catch something really fun. That's a real possibility. I think that nobody wants to see violence, but like we all kind of know how the left handles things when they're disappointed, and the extreme left is definitely going to be on the march. So Fox is a little bit more reasonable about what they're calling it. They're saying that they're haunted by the 1968 rioting convention and that they are bracing for bloodshed. There's a picture of some National Guardsmen who were smacked in the mouth and they're bleeding. You get kind of a little sense of it. It's kind of crazy to see some of the coloration that's going on. You see the helmets and stuff like that of what it looked like. They had all these folks. And they had those big signs, which you guys saw. Actually, I'll throw up the thumbnail real quick. It said, "Hello, Democrats. Welcome to Chicago." Like you need to welcome Democrats to Chicago. It's a stronghold. It always has been, or it has been at least all my life, and it doesn't seem like it's going to go great. So they're going to have this great contrast, apparently. We'll see. I've seen some of the marches already. I've seen some of the evenings. They haven't even had any of the inflammatory speeches come up yet, and they should be kind of fun. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Not violence. I'm also looking forward to Kamala Harris and the word salad, right? Here's a little piece. It's coming from Real Clear, Politics? The incredibly fragile and incredibly strong democracy. We played this the other day on the show, and I think I got to figure out where these clips are. So this is going to be a little bit of a kind of a chore for me, folks. Give me just a moment here to try to sort them out. But we played it the other day, and I didn't realize that we were going to need to play it again. That she says the same speech. That's not that crazy, to be fair. But she says the same speech, and she says like the same nonsense. So this is the speech that we played. I'm going to have to just do it from my memory. This is clip 9. This is what we played previously. And then I'm going to play you the new one. I don't get why she gets away with just making complete, absolute fools of herself, and nobody calls her out. There's joy, though. Remember, there's joy.
Because when we think about the strength of our democracy, I think that there's a duality to the nature of democracy. When it's intact, it's so strong in terms of what it does to uphold and protect individual rights and freedoms. So strong in its nature. And it is very fragile. It will only be as strong as our willingness to fight for it.
Okay, so that's nonsensical, right? And then there's this one, which is the exact same thing. She just got lampooned on this. This is the Real Clear Politics piece is talking about it. But I knew I'd heard these words before. I guess she just cycles this stuff out. I thought she was drunk. This is actually something that someone wrote down. I can only imagine how fun her speeches are going to be at the DNC if this is the kind of the taste of it. The hypothesis, the cloud. She's just not good at this. Can we kind of agree on that here? She is talking with Tim Walz, doing the same bit. Democracy is strong and fragile, the duality. Do people just want to hear this garbage? Who is she talking to?
And that's what our election is about. Our election is about understanding the importance of this beautiful country of ours in terms of what we stand for around the globe as a democracy. As a democracy, we know there's a duality to the nature of democracy. On the one hand, incredible strength when it is intact. What it does for its people to protect and defend their rights, their liberty, and their freedom. Incredibly strong and incredibly fragile.
I mean, she did a better job acting on that one. Incredibly strong, but also incredibly fragile. You know what it makes me feel? It makes me like feel kind of these feelings that are, I don't know, what would you call them? Like joy feeling? Like that joy? The CIA joy?
You are an incredibly sensitive man who inspires joy feelings in all those around you.
Yeah. I kept hearing that word joy, and I was like, where have I heard somebody make fun of this before? And then I realized where it came from. It came from Demolition Man. You know, that dystopian future where the top ground has like a bunch of Kamala Harrises running around doing joy feelings and non-hand contact. And then like underneath, like everybody's like eating rats and stuff. I'm sure the good news is that she has policy prescriptions, right? She's actually got some real ideas. They're not just platitudes about democracy and duality and handshakes that look like non-hand, you do kind of the rubbing in the air without actually touching. There must be some real substance to this somewhere. I think I found it. She's gonna give $25,000 from the government to buy houses for people who have never bought a house before. And it's totally not going to cause the housing prices to go up by $25,000 when there's more free money in the economy. They've also totally understood the concept of return on investment. Are you guys ready for the return on investment bit? Because that makes me really happy to know that she understands finances. This is who we want in charge. Like, the economy is the issue, is it not? Here she is giving you some like real hard policy prescriptions about children and investing, and feels like a lot of joy.
You unveiled your some economic policies last week.
Yeah.
Can you explain how you're going to pay for those? And can you give us a sense of what other policies you want to unveil going forward?
Sure. Well, I mean, you just look at it in terms of what we are talking about, for example, around children and the child tax credit and extending the EITC. It's at $6,000 for the first year of a child's life. The return on that investment in terms of what that will do and what it will pay for will be tremendous. We've seen it when we did it in the first year of our administration. We reduced child poverty by over 50%. So that's a lot of the work. And then what we're doing in terms of the tax credits, we know that there's a great return on that investment. When we increase home ownership in America, what that means in terms of increasing the tax base, not to mention property tax base, what that does to fund schools, again, return on investment. I think it's a mistake for any person who talks about public policy to not critically evaluate how you measure the return on investment. When you are strengthening neighborhoods, strengthening communities, and in particular the economy of those communities, and investing in a broad-based economy, everybody benefits, and it pays for itself.
It pays for itself. In fact, like we're not even paying for it, because it pays for itself, because we're going to give money to people so they can buy a thing, so they can pay us in property taxes. I don't get it. The federal government doesn't get involved in property taxes. Why don't you just do tax cuts and then people can just buy the things that they want to buy and they can afford home ownership, and then maybe you stop printing all the damn money so that our money is not worth less. Maybe just get your government out of the things that are making it not perform. Wouldn't that make sense? I'm exhausted of Kamala, but I did tell you the exhaustion line is going to be trotted out. So just like you heard them try to do the weird thing, the problem is that Kamala and Doug and Waltz, like, they're pretty weird people. Their weird ideas are that maybe we could end a bunch of human lives. We could stop the chain of humanity. That's a weird move. Instead, they're going to try exhausted. So look for the pivot from weird, as we said earlier, to exhausted. I want to give you the example. I found the clip. This is Joe Scarborough talking about it. And I don't know that he makes the case either. In the same way that Kamala just couldn't make the case about what the investment was and what the return on investment was and how that's going to work, Joe's kind of like, Trump's not really that tired, and people aren't really tired of him, but like, we're tired of him, but we're all just tired. It's exhaustion.
You know, there really is. Sam's right. There is a generational divide here that usually sells very well in presidential politics if it's carried through the right way. I will say also, the one word that I always saw as Donald Trump's biggest challenge was exhaustion. Not his personal exhaustion, but the exhaustion of those who had supported him in 2016, some who still supported him in 2020, but we're exhausted, especially after January the 6th, exhausted after just the constant fights, the constant insults, the constant battles. And so now it seems you have exhaustion on that side versus energy and joy, which is what Kamala Harris and her team are projecting forward and trying to project, saying, hey, this is what we're about. And it is a bit like hope and change. But right now, it really seems to be working because Kamala.
Did he just say wheelie seems to be working? Is he trying to do the freedom thing? By the way, Kamala Harris has had the same artist that generated the Barack Obama, the iconic sort of poster that said hope. It says forward. That sounds pretty progressive. Forward towards fascism, forward towards what? I don't know. Again, that word joy, you heard it. in addition to whatever he just said there. Go get it. But they're going to push this. So Tim Walz is going to try to do it. Nothing like a 60-year-old guy who is looking for the attention of a lady that's like 1 year younger than him and is married, telling us about joy. I don't like that we have to pretend like these people are best buddies. I actually haven't seen Trump and Vance together very much. Have you noticed that? Like, I don't see a lot of media hits together where they're hanging out, and I don't see them like doing the same stump speeches where he's like, this is my best buddy. Like, look, I'm in my 30s and I totally hang out with Donald Trump all the time. No, they're just like, hey, we got messages. We're going to push them forward. Meanwhile, you've got the joy thing. You guys ever want to vote on joy?
I'll tell you one of the things I'm most grateful for. She has brought the joy out in this country.
All right, there it is. Here's the best political ad you guys will see. I actually used to think it was the one of the kid who's like does the reorder on the Walmart and whatever. No, shortest and best. Keep to the issues. I think this is fake. If Donald Trump put this out, it's the best troll ever. But and so this may be a violation of some sort of campaign laws for someone to do this, to create it and then chalk on the I'm Donald Trump. Listen to this one. I'm going to play it twice because if you don't hear it, you'll miss it. It's very short. This is the actual message.
A loaf of bread cost 50% more today than it did before the pandemic. Ground beef is up almost 50%.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
A loaf of bread cost 50% more today than it did before the pandemic. Ground beef is up almost 50%.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
How funny is that? That's it. That's all of it. It's like she's a radical weirdo. She says dumb things all the time, and the economy is not good. And she's part of it. The end. She's also part of that like radical thing. Maybe there's this ongoing joke over at CNN. I didn't realize that Chris Cuomo actually is kind of funny. I always thought he was a fraud, right? Like he's not actually believing the things that he was saying on air. He's kind of like a snarky bro, like a gym bro. And I found this clip yesterday, and I wanted to play it for you only because it makes me laugh. Even the wackos and like the ones who understand that it is audacious. Hold on, let me pull this up real quick. The audacity, the audacious power play. Like they understand that intrinsically, do they not? They have to, because the things that are being pushed are so absurd that regular people can't look at it and go like, oh, yeah, I'm behind that. They can't, including the gender nonsense, because regular people don't believe this. I sat in a Twitter space because I was listening to women. A lot of them were lesbians, and the lesbians were like, hey, women spaces are being invaded by men, and like that's the biggest thing. And so there's this whole concept of a TERF, a trans exclusionary radical feminist. I guess I'm one of those people too. Like I kind of believe in the rights of women, kind of think that women should be able to do stuff, not vote necessarily, but but I just think that like leave women alone. And then you have these panderers, these weirdos, this Kamala Harris type. The joy people, right? They can't even believe their own nonsense. And they don't. They actually don't. They have to make fun of it. If you don't prep these people to say the fake thing, they're going to respond like normal people, especially on live TV, and they'll do this.
Good to see you, Senator. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
How are you? Anna, thank you guys. And my pronouns are she, her, and hers.
She, her, and her. Mine too.
All right.
All right, first question for the night.
Oh boy, that was weird, wasn't it? If you guys didn't hear, so that little clip, if you're not watching, this is the 2020 town hall attempt for people to get her to vote in the primary. Do you remember how she didn't get any votes? It's because she was like that. She stepped out on there. This particular town hall was brought on by the equity movement or whatever it's called, the National Human Rights Campaign. So the Human Rights Campaign has got the symbol of the blue square and the two little yellow lines. If you didn't know what that meant, it's like a radical gender garbage. And so she's like, out of nowhere, that was when she was introducing herself. She was like, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm a dark-skinned woman with shoulder-length hair wearing a blue suit for all the blind people that are watching television and listening to her. Like that's where that came from. So totally false. She tried on the gender nonsense. You don't see them doing it today, but that's why she was unable to win any of the vote in 2020 because it was so fake. And she did it to Chris Cuomo. That's Chris Cuomo standing there, CNN host, who theoretically is supposed to be on board. This is the Human Rights Campaign presidential primary town hall. And she gave her pronouns and he said, me too. Mine too. It's fraudulent. It's completely faked and astroturfed. So you tell me that Donald Trump is weird when you got that going on. I just can't buy it. It makes me uncomfortable to think that they thought this was going to be even a little bit interesting to people. It's not. It can't be. What should be interesting should be the economy, the major issues, not trying to trans kids. How about somebody trying to make this interesting argument? Because I find that people having a hard time, people that are having an emotional issue, tend to be a better messenger. People that are actually struggling in the world, that are unable to afford basic things, how about them? Are they going to go and get behind the Kamala? Or are they going to say, this is not working for me? I got two little clips. It's my argument about some of these women. This is the people that are going to vote for Kamala, I guess. They're the ones that are feeling the joy, apparently. Let's try this little taste out.
I'm living paycheck to paycheck. I'm stealing from Peer to pay Paul. And I know it's cyclical. I know, you can't blame the sitting president for everything that's wrong. You can't blame past presidents for everything that's wrong. But come on, guys, we got to do something.
Again, that was earlier this summer. I checked in with Michelle again after President Biden dropped out of the race.
How do you feel about the race now?
This is going to sound crazy, but I feel better because I don't know. I said on my last interview, like, don't really hear from Kamala, but I think I'm with Kamala. I've watched her. I think she has to get her feet wet. She was only the vice president, but I think a woman running this country, oh, God, I hope.
A woman running this country, God, I hope. How about we just hope in God? That would be way better. That woman can't even run her own life. She just told you she's unable to handle her own financial decisions. How does another woman that also doesn't make a lot of sense? Like, we're living in crazy times, people. My point to you is that there are actually people out there that are excited because that's what they were told to think. If you guys want to help try to deprogram some of this stuff, particularly Catholics, there's some Catholics that are like pro-abortion and I don't get it. If you guys want to try to bring some of these people back into the fold and reach them in the pews where they can go out and do a vote, you can support my friends at Catholic Vote, catholicvote.org. The number one article today on The Loop talks about the vasectomies and the abortions at the DNC. They quote a Daily Caller story. If you guys want really good news stories that are really going to hit home on the topics of faith, on family and freedom, on a group that is trying to actually get grassroots activism and get real people that actually agree with us, you don't need to convert that lady who's nuts. You need to convert people who just think that their vote doesn't matter. Catholic Vote is doing that. You can support them on social medias by going to @CatholicVote, or you can go to catholicvote.org and sign up for The Loop and make sure you get that. Get the emails. It will not be a waste of your time. I assure you. Every single time I get it, I'm like, yep, I'm really glad I opened the email. It's free. It costs you nothing. And you guys might as well do that. They're one of our big sponsors here and they keep us going. So we are working on some neat stuff as well on all the social media channels that we're going to be pushing it out. I don't get it. Like, why? Because she's a woman. Honestly, I actually don't care about the gender of persons if they are competent. I just haven't seen like a single woman that I've ever wanted to see run anything, lead anything, at least not the way, certainly not Kamala. Here's a lady that probably also is a Kamala voter, and she's laying out the case for how bad things are. There's a sympathetic end to this sort of like tip talk. When you listen to it, you go, or whatever this is short. You hear her and she's like saying this sob story. And I feel for her because it's awful for people to be without a home. And I've done that. And I've lived like in a car and on my brother's couch before in my life. And it's tough. It's really hard. But she doesn't seem to understand that, like, she's talking about rent. And she says, like, as a throwaway line, I have bad credit. Like, she had nothing to do with the bad credit. That lack of personal responsibility is a real problem. That maybe is the difference between being conservative and not. Like, when I had bad credit, I knew it was my fault because I didn't pay some bills. And then I fixed it. And I've had great credit for 20 plus years because I knew it was my fault. If you don't know it's your fault, you're going to get screwed. The second thing is she's like, they said they weren't going to look at credit, but they did. What they probably said is that they weren't going to do a hard pull on her credit. They were only going to do a soft pull on her credit. I'm just speculating here, but it makes sense, right? If you understand how these things work. Are you trying to tell me that you think an organization that makes money by you paying them bills is not going to see what your history of paying bills looks like? Why would they do that? Anyway, this lady, again, this is the kind of people that are feeling quote unquote joy, but don't have their head engaged. You're not going to convert these people. That's why you got to go out there and find the people that already agree with us and get them registered. They're actually doing that really well. Scott Pressler's been doing it in Wisconsin. It sounds like he's been doing it really well in PA. Get people who are willing to go sign up to vote and then move that needle. Not the people that you're not going to change their mind because they think like this.
Well, we got denied the apartment. And it's heartbreaking. I just want to know how anybody's supposed to make it in America at this point. I mean, it was $1,500 for a 3-bedroom. I have bad credit, so that's what they denied it on. But before we even filled out the paperwork, they told me they don't check credit, but they checked credit. I'm really beside myself because I don't know what to do anymore. 47. Have worked basically my whole life, part-time at least, no matter what, so I could be home with my kids as often as I could be as a single mom, and got into debt during COVID, like so many people did with credit cards, and here I am, unable to qualify, even with my daughter on there as her income as well too. And so, in my opinion, this means that we remain homeless. Granted, we're living with my mom, but it's still not our house. It's not our home. So to me, that means homeless. It's just, I don't get it. I don't get it. How is anybody supposed to afford anything anymore or get approved? I mean, it was considered low-income apartments, which are nice apartments. They really were. I lived there like 15 years ago when my kids were little. And if you can't qualify for that with some debt, then what can you qualify for? It just really... pretty sad and beside myself.
This does seem to be that ongoing problem. Did you notice at the end there, she said they're really nice apartments, they're low-income apartments, and I used to live there as well. Like I lived there 15 years ago. So you're in a circle. Yeah, people make mistakes, and we can be forgiving of that. The government is never going to be the answer to that, it turns out. It never has been. Private charities. My father actually used to run the St. Vincent de Paul Society in his little community in St. Augustine in Florida. And one of the things that I really liked hearing about was that they didn't just give people money and say, yeah, you're poor, you need money. If we could buy our way out of poverty for people, then it would have already happened with the amount of money we spent in this country, the so-called war on poverty. What you do is you help them make better choices. So what they offered to do was, we'll go to the grocery store with you and we'll pay for your grocery bill. But also when you're at the grocery store with them, you get to see what kind of choices they're making on their groceries and you can help them make better ones. Yeah, we'll pay your power bill. If you submit us your water and your electric, we'll make sure that bill gets paid so it doesn't get turned off. That's different than what the government tends to do because the government doesn't have that kind of time. Do you know why? Because they don't care. No government agency cares. What they care about is I was given money, I will give it to this person, and I'm the administrative thing, and I got my paycheck. So X number of people came to me, and they filled out the right forms, and I'm going to go out there and fix the problem by giving them cash. But cash is fundable, and it goes into bad places. And if somebody gives you cash, you can use it for other things, which they do. This is why these government charities never work. Quite interesting, I think, is J.D. Vance. Kind of has an interesting analogy. He's a smart guy. He says things that are really soundbite-like, and they're good. So let's toss that up there before we get too far into it. This is my last little take on this sort of economy. I know we've been clip heavy in the middle, but I like playing these things. I like hearing what real people say. I like hearing what weirdo politicians say. I like hearing what smart people say too. This is a clever little analogy.
Because the American people just don't buy the idea that Kamala Harris, who has been vice president for 3.5 years, is somehow going to tackle the inflation crisis in a way tomorrow that she hasn't for the past 1,300 days. Giving Kamala Harris control over inflation policy, Shannon, it's like giving Jeffrey Epstein control over human trafficking policy. The American people are much smarter than that. They don't buy the idea that Kamala Harris represents a fresh start. She is more of the same. It is doubling down on the failed policies of the Harris administration to give Kamala Harris a promotion rather than to fire her, which is what I think most Americans are going to do on November.
Exactly correct. Now, lest you guys hear anything from some, let's say, unnamed MAGA influencers that are making arguments that that some people have been defrauded of their right and that a crime was committed and will be when they coronate Kamala Harris and they have her, named as the nominee because certain Democrats were deprived their right to vote. I want to remind you guys, and I think I put it in the show notes, but you have absolutely no right to choose the president in this country. Go back and read the Constitution. This was reaffirmed in 2020. This is one of the most interesting court cases that got a 9-0. What it said was, and it's Chiafalo versus Washington. That's the name of the court case. 2020 Supreme Court decision, 9-0, unanimous. You should pay attention to unanimous stuff. What it says is very clearly that the state legislatures retain the plenary power of appointing electors to the Electoral College. And there are two things that means. Number one, you as an individual, as a person who votes in the general election for the president, that doesn't mean anything. Only means something because the states create laws that said that your vote matters. It doesn't. Not according to the Constitution. Because the way that our system was set up was very specific, and it was meant to remove the power of putting the senior executive. It was removed away from the individuals. It wasn't supposed to be a popularity contest, which is what we're dealing with right now. It's one of the major problems that we have. The undermining of the constitutional republic that we have in the United States is real. And it's been going on for well over 100 years. The direct election of senators and the fact that there is a popular vote of any kind that determines the Electoral College is also not according to the way that our founders saw it. What it did is it makes a popularly elected king-type figure. And there's a lot of dumb people out there. The founding fathers probably knew that there were a lot of dumb people too. And dumb people vote according to their emotions, and they think that Kamala Harris is a reasonable solution with her forward and her hope and her joy and all this other garbage. It wasn't supposed to be like that. What was supposed to happen was you vote for a couple of people that represent you. Your congressman in the House, that's the House of Representatives. That person is supposed to represent you and your district. You also get to vote for your state houses, whether they have two, most of them have two, right? So there's a Senate and a House type setup in most of the states. So you get to vote for those people, and they represent you in various ways. And then those people in the state houses are supposed to determine, based on the majority that is there, who's supposed to go be their electors. If all of the Republicans in all of the state houses chose to remove the general election, to remove the president from the name of the ballot in the general election, they could do that. And they could say that we are going to appoint electors according to our majority that we hold in these Republican state houses. They don't have the balls to do it, by the way, but they could. They could do this. In the same way that the left has said Chiafalo versus Washington affirms that the National Popular Vote Compact, which is a group of people that have gone in, there are a bunch of states that have passed laws in Democrat areas that says if they can get enough people to go on to make it work, when the popular vote goes in favor of one candidate, their state, even if the people voted otherwise in their state, will vote along with the national popular vote. So an example of this is, let's say you live in Texas. And let's say Texas signed on to this, which they didn't. But if Texas signed on to the National Popular Vote Compact, what would happen is they would have a Hillary Clinton scenario where Hillary Clinton wins the popular vote but doesn't win the Electoral College, okay? Normally. But because of the popular vote, Texas would say, I know that people in Texas actually voted for Trump 2016. But because the popular vote leans, we're going to negate the Electoral College. That is something that is going on. So because of Chiafalo versus Washington, the idea that you could negate the Electoral College exists, but the idea that you could make the Electoral College do what it wants also exists. They gave us a sword. It has two edges. If we want to swing it to the right, what happens is we don't get to vote for president anymore. And that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. That would be fantastic, because then at least we get stuff done at the executive the way it was supposed to be. The executive would represent the majority of the states, which, by the way, would lean red, probably for a while. Or it goes the other way, and they get their national popular vote movement. You don't have a right to elect the president under the Constitution. People are saying, why would you advocate your rights? You don't advocate your rights. You don't have that right. It's not a constitutional right to elect the president. And I just want to remind you guys that. So anybody who is suggesting that people in the primary process have had their rights removed from them because of the way that the Democrats chose to do it, no, they didn't. I'm not naming any names. You guys can guess later. Go out there and read some things on social media. I saw it. I want to do something since I showed JD Vance. I want to push this up there. This is another piece that we've covered a little bit on, and I want to touch it long form. MSNBC is pushing this thing that basically JD Vance is like this anti-woman guy because he said something about the role of postmenopausal women in society, and his statement, this woman's pushback. So she's apparently a journalist and an author, and her name is Desiree Cooper, and you see her on the screen right here. She says, the common thread I have with JD Vance's meemaw that his remarks made cut extra deep, so she's feeling really bad. She sacrificed everything to support her grandchildren, and so did his. And so the story goes is that his meemaw, his grandmother, according to his 2016 book, was very responsible for his success because she gave up everything to not pursue her dreams, but to make sure that he was able to be successful. And there are a lot of women who have taken on the burden of bad parents, and they have become parents, even though they are actually grandparents. And we know that's a thing. And sometimes it's because of death, and I get that. But a lot of times, even in our own family, it's because of a failure of people in the generation that actually had the kids. Because of drug abuse, because of irresponsible decisions, because maybe the same situation as this lady, they have bad credit, they just give up on their kids. And so grandparents step in and do the job. Now, thank God we have that social safety net that exists because of some families that are willing to go and take on that burden. But the interesting thing is this woman takes this as an attack on JD Vance because he said the whole purpose, actually a podcast host said the whole purpose of postmenopausal females. Who was the podcast host? I remember reading this the other day. Let me hit the hyperlink real quick. Who's the podcast host that says this? I think it was on Daily Signal. And now I'm not going to be able to find. Oh, it's Eric Weinstein. Okay, so Eric Weinstein says this, that the purpose of postmenopausal females is to help raise grandchildren, and he agrees with it. And so that's the attack line, is that he basically doesn't think that women have value when they're older. But look at what had to fail for this woman, this journalist, Desiree Cooper, to have to step into that role. It means that her children, who had children, failed to be there. If things work the way they're supposed to be working, and if you actually believe as a conservative that there are certain roles that fit people, then being a grandparent does mean that you are supportive of the children, of the next generation. If things work well, you've been theoretically, according to the American system, you're supposed to put money away. You're supposed to be able to, at some point, you're no longer physically able to work maybe, or maybe it's just not inappropriate, or maybe you've actually just got enough money that you don't have to work as hard as you did, and you have the ability to pass on information, and you can be generational wisdom and knowledge. We're seeing this in our own family. It's incredibly important. The other thing is my generation, I'm in my 40s, so people that are in their 30s and 40s saw this kind of loss of this. We don't live in the same places necessarily as our parents. We don't necessarily have that institutional knowledge that's handed down. And for people that had a failed generation of parents where the grandparents had to step in, it means that one of the safety lines is cut. I just find it really offensive that this woman is trying to simplify something. What he said was this woman did something amazing, his grandmother, but it's because his mom blew it, which I think is also really important, right? Like when you have a generation of people that don't do their job, that want to get vasectomies and trans their kids, that want to go out and have abortions and go down Democrat policies, that's the argument. JD Vance is making a fundamentally conservative argument about what is better. And he's actually not even saying it. It's Eric Weinstein who's saying it biologically, that there is a time when you matter a little bit less in the genetic sphere of things, I've already said, the minute that you are able to have kids and they are able to stand on their own 2 feet, biologically, you're sort of superfluous. Is that calloused? Yes. Is it emotional? Is that how I emotionally feel? No. But if you look at the grand scheme of things, if you didn't exist anymore, you are not going to be the person that's going to be the make or break or the pass or fail of the next generation. And that is the victory. It's very weird. It's very weird to see this stuff. I've said the word weird about 50 times right now because all of these arguments, for all of the fact that they were trying to pin this on J.D. Vance, it's completely outlandish to me. I'm going to throw a couple other things out here that is the fear, and I think they don't land well. I'm going to go through these kind of quickly because I don't want to go too long today. This was put out by ProPublica. And so I'm starting to see some of the rumblings. In addition to the joy and the exhaustion, there is a normalization that there could be political violence, and they're going to try to pin it on the political right. And so I'm seeing that right now. ProPublica did this long story about a military militia group that you've never heard of called the American Patriot 3%ers. Never heard of them before. I worked in places where we did surveillance on people that were theoretically involved in domestic terrorism. They call this armed and underground inside the turbulent and secret world of the American militia. The idea of a militia that you would train with your neighbors with firearms and tactics and know how to solve a problem is very American. And it may come back to being really important if this country gets as Western as it could, which we're going to see some rumblings of in Chicago as the DNC kicks off. When local law enforcement, the people that we sort of trusted to solve the problems, if they're unable to do it, don't you want to know that your neighbors are able to step into the gap and hold that line? They're making this fear argument. They go out there and they basically attack the person who's the quote unquote national commander, but they openly say that he was smart enough to tell his people not to go to January 6th and not to wear any of their patches or anything like that if they did. That seems smart. That seems like people that understand discipline, which is kind of what we're all about when you talk about people in the military and the way that you would use weapons and tactics, that you would employ force. I don't know. I read this whole article here, and at the end of the day, it seemed like a dumb hit piece that basically said, these guys aren't a problem, but we want to fearmonger. So it's tumultuous and it's turbulent and it's a secret world. And the guy who founded it, they claim he's a liar because he served in the military, but he didn't actually deploy in the military. So that means something to something. I don't know what it is. Also, he was a model when he was younger, which seems like right up their alley. Very interesting. Meanwhile, what we're not hearing about is this, because I didn't see this on any of the main websites, but this seems like a real big deal. This is a legacy that happens under Joe Biden's America. Two different articles, one from from Fox News, which covered it only on Saturday. The other one came out in the Air Force Times. Security forces, which is the military police unit that the Air Force has, were fired upon by a drive-by shooting outside of Joint Base San Antonio / Lackland Air Force Base, specifically on the Medina Training Annex. Now, this is near and dear to my heart, not only because I live in Texas and it's just down the road from me, but I spent 2 years of my life living and training at the Medina Training Annex. It's this little junked off section where nobody from Big Air Force really pays attention. And we've got the cooks train there, the security forces train there, and the pararescue and the combat control and the TACPs go and train there. So it's home to the 342nd Training Squadron, which was my home for 2 years. And it's very interesting to see that they had basically two separate attacks. You don't normally hear this. They don't have any suspects in the case, supposedly. But somewhere around 2 a.m, somebody drove by and started firing at the gate. There was only one gate guard there at the time. And then at 4:30, it happens again. At least one subject firing out of a sedan. And apparently they said officers, but it sounded like there was only a solo person at the gate originally. They beefed up security at that gate. I've gone through that gate of all hours of the day and night. I've gone over and over again. And if you know the neighborhood outside of the Medina Training Annex, it's garbage. I actually had dudes that were out on a run that got shot in the neck with pellet guns out there because there's just crappy kids and gangbanger, garbage. But do they call that out here and say that it's a crap neighborhood full of Hispanic gang members? No. It was a place that you didn't want to listen to earbuds when you were running outside there, at least in the 2010s. Because it was a really good way to get shot, seriously, by a pellet gun, or people would come and try to steal your Walkman from you or your phone. Not a nice place. In any case, I don't see any coverage of that. I also don't see any coverage of the fact that there's garbage outside that gate and the garbage people. We're going to worry about militia movements, but not the Hispanic gang members, or in this case, the black gang members who are in Baltimore. Apparently, there's this absolute mystery of what's going on in Baltimore. There was a mass shooting. Nobody knows who was shot. Nobody knows anything about who was involved in it. 1 person dead, 7 injured. Multiple subjects opening firing. It's Baltimore. Do you want a clue? I used to work in Baltimore pretty regularly. It's black gang members. And you know who the victims of this are, by the way? They're also black people in crappy neighborhoods. Why can they not just say this? This is CNN. They managed to say the truth about the DNC being, audacious. What they can't say is that the shooters of these things are almost definitely black, and that the victims are probably black too. They don't describe either one of them. What they did is they kind of made a gun control argument. They said that multiple victims were found with gunshot wounds when the police arrived. The shooting happened at 8 p.m., so just like right at the hours of darkness, but not quite dark. You think people couldn't see what was going on? I don't. Victims walked into the hospital seeking treatment. A 36-year-old man was pronounced dead. No further information, as we would say in the intel community. And investigators believe that the victims range between 22 and 45 years old. The oldest victim was 46. That doesn't seem like 22 to 45. Okay, got it. So their ranges from stable to critical condition. So this was a serious interaction. No further information. By the way, there have been 350 mass shootings. You know where a lot of them happen? In Chicago, where the DNC is about to take place. How many mass shootings could we expect in the next week that are not going to be covered because of the race of the shooters or the victims? Because God forbid you have to tell the truth about what's going on here. They're complicit in this, and they're normalizing a certain type of violence, and they're covering up another type of violence, which is the actual violence that lead to actual homicides in this country. And it's certainly not black people in general. It's a very small fragment. You can actually look at the people who are most likely to be shot and most likely to be shooters, and they are black males involved in gang activity and narcotics between the ages of 16 and 35. It's a really, really, really concrete group. And the victims can be anybody who lives around those people. I don't know why we continue to call them mass shootings when these used to be regularly called gang shootings, and we used to be an honest country about that kind of stuff. In any case, this stuff should be on your radar as the DNC kicked off, because not just pro-Palestine idiots that are out there running around and screaming free Palestine and wanting to fight with cops. This is also the opportunity for some turf battles to take place while the cops are distracted. When they pull all of the cops in Chicago into certain neighborhoods so that they can go and handle the security of the DNC because Kamala Harris is there and they don't want it to look bad, don't think that there's not going to be a reaction in the communities where these people who have had long-standing beefs are not going to step up and do them. So you can look for a very violent Chicago outside of the areas where the police are trying to handle the DNC and ward off that 1968 thing where they learned their lesson. What they're not going to be able to do is backfill more police positions, and they're already understaffed. So that's my little prediction for the week, is that we may not see any real violence of any kind that matters in front of the DNC. What we'll see is the rest of Chicago will suffer for it, particularly all those neighborhoods. If you guys want to watch this, go to heyjackass.com. That is the place to go find it. Heyjackass.com is a really good way to do that. And if you're interested in not being a victim and you want to make sure that you are well armed, you can go and go to Shield Arms. This is one of our little affiliates that we work with. Shield Arms with an S on the end of it.com. Shield Arms, just like the shield like you'd carry if you were a soldier or some sort of, grunt. You're seeing mine. This is the SA9. It's a folding stock AR 9mm. They make 5.56 as well. They make a really, really nice product. They do in-house Cerakoting, which is amazing. They upgrade all the weapons with ambidextrous flip safeties that are 45 degrees, great triggers. The barrels are solid. They use good furniture like Midwest Industries and things like that. Use promo code KYLE. Just use my name. You'll save 5%, including on firearms. That's a pretty good deal. You won't find that in any stores. They're starting to carry them in Bass Pro and Cabela's. You can order direct from shieldarms.com and have them sent to an FFL for you if you're so inclined. And arm yourself. I'm just saying, if you can afford it. They make a pretty nice firearm. It's not high, super premium dollars, but it's definitely not cheap. So we'll save you a couple bucks using my name, KYLE. And if you're carrying a Glock 43 or a 43X or a 48, one of the smaller micro Glock pistols, you should definitely be using their magazines. I use them every single day. They take it from a capacity of 10 to a capacity of 15. That's a total game changer. I'll show you guys some shooting later on the Locals channel. So go ahead and check out our Locals, and you can find some of the videos out there of me using their stuff. I've used their magazines, hundreds of rounds through them, no jams, no issues. They're on the Gen 3. They're a good thing. They were turned down by the FBI, by the way, which is the reason why I like them a lot too. So they don't do business with the FBI. KyleSerafin.com is where the Locals is. KyleSerafin.com. Let's do a 5-star review, which actually comes from Spotify this time. You guys actually used the stars on here. This is from John Whalen coming in about a week and a half ago. It says, "Are you a good German? Do you pretend to be gay to better your political career? Do you carry a picture of Chris Wray in your wallet? Then this review is for you." I absolutely love it when people are sarcastic. So thank you so much, John. Here we go. I continued listening to the Kyle Seraphin Show It may cause you to begin to think for yourself. And that maybe, against everything you've been taught in the public school, once you know this podcast accepts all, and by listening to Kyle, you'll have a clearer picture of what's going on in our nation, what's needed to turn this ship around. Are you a good German? Is that a thing that is a category for you? That's not a good thing to be. I actually called the Deputy Assistant Director of Human Resources at the FBI a good German for enforcing a nasal swab testing. It's an implied insult that you are the kind of person who should have hanged at Nuremberg for violating human rights, which is what I said explicitly, which is to say that you're a flippin' Nazi. Don't be a good German. Don't just go along to get along. Don't just get your paycheck and a pension because you're not willing to pay attention. Don't do that. Don't be that person. I got a 5-star review for you. I'm sorry, I've got a palate cleanser for you. And this is related to the modern problems. This is a fun take on it, so just come on. We talked about England in the last couple of weeks and some of the knife crime that they have going on here. I found this comedian. This is the, at least America has modern problems is the take. Look, this is a dark humor, but this is what we're all about here on the Kyle Seraphin Show. So enjoy this one. A comedian talking about maybe the differences between America and the British Empire.
Where's your accent from? London. Oh. I was in England. It was really fun. I was making fun of them a lot. You live there now? Yeah. Dude, I was making fun. Can I? I was making fun of them because it's so medieval over there. Here's an example when the Queen died. My buddy was like, have you heard? The Queen has passed and Prince Charles is taking the throne. I'm like, are you reading a book? You want me to play along? Have you alerted the town crier? You know what I'm saying? Then they heckle me. They're like, you've got a gun problem. They said we have a gun problem. And I was like, yeah, at least it's a modern problem. What's the biggest violent crime in London right now? Knives. Yeah, they have a dagger problem. If only I'd done this. Can't dodge a bullet, baby. America. It's a serious problem. And you can dodge a bullet if you just look to the right a little bit.
Yo, you can dodge the bullet. Do you see Donald Trump has made that impact on culture? Everything about that little comedy bit makes me happy too, by the way. The dagger problem, that's funny. Like the fact of the matter is human beings will do violence to each other wherever they are with whatever tools they have. So don't let people distract you with the gun argument. I think that's the kind of closing thought there. But how interesting, because I don't know what that comedian's voting habits are. Comedians tend to be pretty liberal, but they like to offend a lot of people. But the way that Donald Trump, can we bring that back into the news cycle? Can we remember, please, that some unhinged lunatic tried to shoot and kill the guy that was that went to the RNC and actually won the primary versus this lady who's been appointed for all of her joy? In any case, I just wanted to kind of resettle us on that. There is going to be this distraction because I do think something bad will happen in Chicago. It just probably won't happen right next to the DNC. And now you guys heard it here first. Stick around with the Kyle Seraphin Show this week. We're going to have Mark Naughton on. Make sure you've got the notifications clicked on, whether you're on YouTube or whether you're on Twitter, on X, if you're listening to us on Rumble, if you're on the Locals app, wherever it is that you're listening to us, make sure you've got notifications on because we're going to go live at like random times when Mark is out in the world. He's going to send the feed in and I'm going to pipe it to you and we'll do some commentary. I'll put the comedian's name out on social media. It'll be on True Social and it'll be on Twitter in a little bit here. I got to go pull his name because I didn't actually see it and I should give him credit, but good work on everyone's end there. Folks, thank you for joining our show. Really do appreciate it. We do appreciate your reviews. We appreciate you joining us. We appreciate you sharing it and we will see you again tomorrow. I almost forgot. Tomorrow morning, I have an interview and we are going to be talking about gold IRAs. I teased this up. We've actually got it. It's the owner and president of a company called Miles Franklin. They do precious metals. He's an expert in the field, 30 plus years of experience. He is going to debunk the IRA myths. The MAGA gold rush should not be something that takes your life savings. So share that one. Make sure people know. If you have friends that are thinking about putting money into gold, they need to listen to our show tomorrow. Nobody is going to play this for you in the same way, at least not in the right-wing space that I can see, because a lot of people are invested in making money on gold IRAs. They are taking your life savings and they are pilfering it. So check out tomorrow. Share the show early and often. I will actually post the link soon. It'll be up in the next couple hours. And that way you guys can share it around and people can tune in. All right. Until then, God bless all of you. Be safe if you live anywhere, but especially if you live in Chicago. And we'll see you tomorrow morning. We're out of here.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.